The EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network presents Vatican Insider with Joan Lewis. Each week, Joan brings you news from inside the Vatican and the Church around the world, as well as interviews and answers to your questions. Now, here's the host of Vatican Insider, Joan Lewis.
Welcome to the first edition of Vatican Insider in this new year, in this Jubilee Year of Hope. Lots of news, but first about my guest in the interview segment, Father Edward Linton, the director of the Institute for Continuing Theological Education, ICTE, at the Pontifical North American College, our seminary in Rome. He is a Benedictine monk and priest of St. Meinrad Arch Abbey. We learn of his fascinating background, the birth of the Institute on the NAC campus, the twice-yearly programs it offers, extracurricular activities, and how priests can apply. But first we go to the top news stories of the past week. Sunday, December 29th. At the Angelus on the Feast of the Holy Family, Pope Francis invited families to spend quality time regularly together, and he suggested something as simple as sitting together at the dinner table and conversing openly and meaningfully with one another, and by the way, not looking at cell phones. Do you know why the Holy Family of Nazareth is a model, he asked? Because it's a family that converses, that talks. Dialogue is the most important element for a family. A family that does not communicate cannot be a happy family. In a family, listening is more vital than understanding, as it gives importance to the other, recognizing his or her right to exist and to think autonomously. And by the way, children need this. After praying the Angelus with the faithful, the Pope asked for prayers for the victims and survivors of a plane crash in South Korea, and he expressed closeness to families worldwide suffering the consequences of war. Monday, December 30th. Pope Francis said he was saddened to learn of the death of former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, and he offered his heartfelt condolences and prayers for those who mourn his passing. In a telegram, the Pope recalled Carter's firm commitment, motivated by deep Christian faith, to the cause of reconciliation and peace between peoples, the defense of human rights, and the welfare of the poor and those in need. He commended Carter, who died at 100, to the infinite mercies of Almighty God. Tuesday, December 31st, New Year's Eve. Pope Francis marked the end of 2024 with the Te Deum hymn of thanksgiving for the blessings of 2024 at the conclusion of First Vespers for the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God. He said the extensive works that Rome has seen in preparation for the Jubilee of Hope are especially significant insofar as they correspond to Rome's particular vocation to, quote, welcome everyone, so that everyone might recognize themselves as a son or daughter of God, and as brothers and sisters of one another. Stressing that the hope of the world lies in fraternity, Francis prayed that Mary, our Holy Mother, might help us to walk together as pilgrims of hope on the path of fraternity. Wednesday, January 1st. Pope Francis marked the beginning of 2025 with the celebration of Mass for the Solemnity of Mary, Most Holy Mother of God. The Holy Father said Jesus' coming as a tiny baby through the Virgin Mary reveals how God chooses to act, quote, through littleness and hiddenness. Jesus revealed God's love in the beauty of his humanity, dwelling in our midst, sharing in our daily life. And by the frailty of his humanity and his concern for the weak and vulnerable, Jesus shows us the face of God. Francis invited everyone to entrust this new year to Mary, the Mother of God, with the hope that we might learn, like her, to protect the precious gift of life. January 1st, by the way, is also the World Day of Peace. After his traditional New Year's Day Angelus prayer, Pope Francis issued a powerful call to political leaders, urging them to set a good example by canceling or significantly reducing the debts of the poorest countries. He said no country or people should be crushed by debt. Francis also once again emphasized his firm no to war, declaring that it always destroys. Thursday, January 2nd. Pope Francis's monthly prayer intention this January is for the right to an education. In his monthly video, he warned that today we're experiencing an educational catastrophe, stating this is no exaggeration. Due to wars, migration, and poverty, some 250 million boys and girls lack education. All children and youth have the right to go to school, regardless of their immigration status. Education is a hope for everyone. In addition, he said, it can save migrants and refugees from discrimination, criminal networks, and exploitation. Also January 2nd, Pope Francis, in a telegram of condolences for the death of Cardinal Angelo Amato on December 31st, recalled the priestly spirit and theological preparation with which this Salesian prelate served the Holy See. He spent himself with human finesse and generosity for the gospel and the church, Pope Francis wrote, expressing his gratitude to God for the edifying witness of this spiritual son of St. John Bosco. The cardinal's funeral was that afternoon in St. Peter's Basilica. Also January 2nd, in a message to Archbishop Gregory Aymond of New Orleans, Louisiana, Pope Francis assured the entire city of his spiritual closeness and commended the victims of the terrorist attack in the southern U.S. city to the loving mercy of Almighty God. Francis stressed he was deeply saddened to learn of the loss of life and injury. 14 people died and dozens more were wounded when a 42-year-old man drove a pickup truck at high speed into a crowd on the city's celebrated Bourbon Street. Friday, January 3rd. Pope Francis addressed a delegation of the Archconfraternity of Saints John the Baptist and Evangelist of the Knights of Malta from Catanzaro, Sicily. He reflected on the verbs to serve, to walk, and to accompany, reminding the confraternity that the Lord will always accompany them when they strive to do these three things. He urged members of the confraternity to continue with hope along the path of generosity, on which he assured them, the Lord will always accompany you. Also Friday, the Holy Father received in audience the members of the Italian Union of the Blind and Partially Sighted, reminding them that 2025 is a Jubilee Year of Hope, telling them, you are pilgrims of hope. My wish is that you will always be on the move, eager to meet Jesus, to know him, to listen to his word that gives meaning to life, that fills it with a new joy, a different joy, a joy that is peace, that is goodness, that is tenderness. The joy of Jesus is like this. Well, those are the news highlights of the week, but stay right here for my conversation with Benedictine Father Ed Linton, Director of ICTE, the Institute for Continuing Theological Education at the North American College in Rome. Have a lovely weekend and a beautiful celebration of the Epiphany on January 6th, this coming Monday.
Mother Angelica had a simple goal when she began EWTN: to reach the world with the gospel message. EWTN radio broadcasts 24/7 on smart speakers, a worldwide shortwave radio service, and radio services for the Philippines, Great Britain, and Ireland. We've never wavered from our mandate to proclaim the truth and majesty of the Catholic faith. Thank you for joining EWTN in this mission.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. We talk a lot about the importance of family culture, but what is it? Family culture is an unwritten set of expectations, beliefs, and values. It's a way of life that confers identity, belonging, and mission on its members. You have a family culture in your home already, whether you realize it or not. And as parents and even grandparents, we have to ask, what are the unspoken messages we are communicating to our children?
When a family culture is dysfunctional, children learn lessons they take into adulthood which are hard to unlearn. But in strong, healthy families, the culture exponentially magnifies parenting and keeps kids doing the right thing. As they say in the business world, culture beats strategy every time. A family's culture is a powerful force that sends messages more clearly than words alone. It is essential that you and your spouse are intentional and thoughtful about the culture you are stewarding within your home.
For more free resources on building your family culture, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
Welcome back to Vatican Insider. Here's Joan Lewis.
Well, I just want to welcome my guest to a new edition of Vatican Insider and the interview segment. And the interview segment is probably the special part of my transmission every weekend because of the special nature of the guest. And my guest today is Father Ed Linton. He's the director of the Institute for Continuing Theological Education at the Pontifical North American College. And of course, my listeners know that is our American seminary here in Rome. Now, Father's a Benedictine monk and a priest of St. Meinrad Arch Abbey. And his background includes being a college teacher, associate pastor and pastor, monastic guest master, and director of international Benedictine formation at the Badia Primatiale of Sant'Anselmo in Rome. Well, Father, welcome to Vatican Insider.
Thank you, Joan. Nice to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you as a guest in my home and my office. And I want you to first tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and then expand a bit on the roles that I mentioned above, being a teacher, pastor, etc. So, where are you from?
I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville is about an hour from St. Meinrad. So I went to school at St. Meinrad. We had a college at the time, and so I got my undergraduate degree there. And then following college, I entered the community in 1985, so quite a few years ago now. And you've already run through the list of jobs that I've had in the monastery.
Yeah. Tell us about where you were a college teacher, a pastor, and associate.
So I taught in our college at St. Meinrad. So it was one of these things where after ordination, they needed an English teacher. I never thought in my whole life about being an English teacher. I liked English,
sure.
But they said, what would you think about teaching English? And this fall we need an English teacher. So I started teaching English composition, so English 101.
Okay,
and loved it. And I got a master's degree while I was doing that in English literature from Middlebury College in Vermont. I did that over the summers. And then while I was teaching, they came back to me and they said, what would you think about teaching oral communication, like public speaking, things like that? And so I went off and I got a doctorate in communication. Unfortunately, the college closed while I was studying. The community decided to close the college. We still have a school of theology. Then the abbot came back and he said, well, since we don't have a college anymore, what would you think about going to a parish? And I went to Chicago, Illinois, where I served for 12 years.
I'm a native of a Chicago suburb, Oak Park.
Yes, yeah, I know, yes. Yeah. I was in sort of the other side of the tracks, you might say, at 29th and Wabash.
Sure,
downtown.
Yeah. So you were there as a pastor for several years?
And I was the pastor of that parish for 12 years and loved it. Wouldn't trade 1 minute of that experience. And what a dynamic church the church in Chicago is. It was just such a privilege to serve there.
I have never known a priest that didn't love where he was a pastor. And you could be a terrific parish, you could have problems, but you're still the father of a family.
That's
and
true.
It's always the family that makes life very rich for a pastor.
Absolutely.
So, well, tell us about how this path brought you to Rome.
Well, when I finished being the pastor at St. James in Chicago, and it was time for me to, I served 2 terms, and the abbot asked me to come back to the monastery in Indiana. So I was there, actually doing the same sort of thing that I do now, continuing education for parish priests, and the program that the monastery runs. Quite to my surprise, the abbot one day called me into his office and he asked me, what would you think about going to Rome, to Sant'Anselmo, which is sort of our Benedictine headquarters.
Oh, sure.
He said they're asking for someone to organize a sabbatical program, continuing formation for monks and nuns. Well, to be honest, Joan, I told the abbot I didn't want any part of it because I was very happy there. But I told him that I would do it if he really wanted me to do it, and he said, I would really like for you to give this a try. So I found myself in Rome. I had agreed to 3 years of doing this program, and I was in my 4th year. You know, sometimes you reach a point where you know that it's that's not for you, you know. And I knew that particular thing was not for me. But I was so sad about the thought of leaving Rome.
Oh, yes.
And because it sort of got my blood, which was made me laugh to myself because I didn't want to come here. But God knew me better than I knew myself, you might say.
Sure.
And at that moment, the rector of the North American College asked me to come over and organize or to work in the Continuing Theological Education, ICTE we call it.
And exactly, ICTE, and here we are. I have to say about Sant'Anselmo, there's many things to say about that, but they're famous for the pill, which is the Pontifical Institute of Liturgy.
Absolutely.
So you have to say right away when you say the pill, you want to clarify what you're talking about. It has to do with the liturgy, you know. And then, of course, the Ash Wednesday penitential procession with the Pope and everybody begins at Sant'Anselmo and then
Santa Savina.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a city block, 2 city blocks away. So, well, you know, Father, I've been to the actual Institute building, the Casa O'Toole. I've been there quite a number of times. And it's such a beautiful place. It's on the property of separate from the main building of the North American College. And visiting the website, I visit the NAC, N-A-C, folks. When I say NAC, I mean North American College. And so I visited the website, and the Institute, of course, has its own page. And it begins with this quote: "Ongoing formation is an indispensable requirement in the life of every priest and in his exercise of the priestly ministry." And this is from The Gift of the Priestly Vocation, which is a document from the Dicastery for Clergy. So let's look a little bit about the history of the Casa O'Toole, of the ICTE on the NAC campus. Tell us about that.
The ICTE program, which is a program, as you say, for ongoing formation for priests, and I love this quote that you just used. It goes back to the early 1970s, 1972, which was just shortly after the Second Vatican Council.
Sure.
When for the first time the Second Vatican Council starts to suggest that priests need ongoing formation. What the Vatican document was really referring to were newly ordained priests.
Sure.
But now I think the Church has gone beyond that, understanding that, you know, a priest could be in the seminary for 4 or 5 years, at maybe perhaps a minimum. The maximum maybe 12 years if they went to high school, college,
sure,
theology. But whether it's 12 years or 4 or 5 years, it's a drop in the bucket of a person's life.
Absolutely.
And so the Church is saying, how can a priest think that he's done after just a minute, basically, in his
sure,
life of priestly formation? And so the Church is encouraging priests to continue their formation. Now, a priest doesn't have to go on sabbatical or come to Rome to be engaged in ongoing formation.
Sure.
Retreats, spiritual direction, special programs that the diocese offers, those are all part of continuing formation, of course. But what we offer in Rome is something very unique because, as you say, Rome is an open museum.
Oh my gosh. But you know, it just common sense says, why wouldn't you want continuing education to learn new things or develop a theology further or whatever it may be? Because it happens in medicine. It happens in law. It happens in so many other fields. You become a doctor, but you know what? The day you become a doctor, after that day there's going to be new types of surgery. There's going to be new medicines. There's going to be developments, brain scans, whatever it may be. And there can be developments. Not that doctrine is going to change in the Church. What we believe in is going to always be the same. But there can be new developments in many, many fields. And you look at liturgy, enculturation, so many things.
Absolutely. And I think the most important reason why the Church asks priests to do this, well, besides the reasons that you're pointing out, but really just about that curiosity and wonder, so that a priest is able, because what is the important role for the priest, of course, is to preach. And if a priest doesn't have any sort of curiosity about the Word of God, or a sense of wonder about what this means for him and for his people, then there's something missing. And so really what I think our program tries to do is to give priests an opportunity outside of their normal situation to just engage in the life of wonder and to engage in the life of curiosity. And I'm telling you, Joan, I wish you could see, wish you could be with these priests when they're encountering this art in Rome or in Italy, this beautiful Renaissance art that we have. And these priests from, I don't mean to disparage Nebraska, but I'll use it as an example, priests in Nebraska who've never seen Renaissance art before.
Of course.
Who are engaging with this, and you could see their hearts and their minds are just expanding.
You can look at a painting of the Nativity, and perhaps an artist had his own beautiful take, and you just look at it, I never thought of that.
Right, absolutely.
And, you know, on the manger or on a little shepherd being right next to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph because of the good news that the shepherd got. And it makes you think about that aspect of Christmas. So there's a million paintings you can see.
Oh, there's so many paintings and so many beautiful things that you can notice in these paintings.
Or just the churches, the statues.
The churches, the statues.
The goldsmiths, the silversmiths, the artists who were trying to give glory to God. And I can't tell you, Father, how many times I go into churches today, modern churches, and I just wonder, where is that beauty? Where is that? What was the artist trying to depict, tell us about God? Because I don't see much beauty. You go into other churches, you could spend an hour each at some of the side chapels or whatever, and your faith becomes alive. The paintings, the statues, maybe just the Stations of the Cross.
Another thing about what we do with people is we don't just kind of throw them into church and say, figure it out yourself.
Oh, of course.
But we work with expert guides. And these guides are just, again, guides here in Rome who are filled with faith. They're men and women of faith. And they know how to bring all this to life so that these priests are able to take this home with them and in their preaching, talk about what they've encountered here to share with their people at home.
And you know what? There's going to be a new enthusiasm when they talk about it.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be just words on a paper. It's like, I remember when I got back from my first trip to the Holy Land, and I am a reader in my parish, a lector. And I mean, the first time that I don't remember what the very first thing was, but I wanted to say, you know, and this is from the letter of so-and-so, and I wanted to say, been there and done that. I mean, the Sea of Galilee, every single thing comes to life. I can't read the word Galilee, it'd be praying the rosary or whatever, without thinking of Galilee.
Absolutely.
It just so brings it to life. So the program's been around for a few decades.
It's been around for a few decades. You know, and I want to add to that because I was thinking, as you were talking, Joan, about, you know, how fortunate many of us are, you and I especially, to have the opportunity to travel to places and experience places, to put our big foot in the in the Sea of Galilee, for example. But of course, there are so many people who don't have that possibility, don't have that opportunity. And so when the priests come, I the first thing I always say to them, and sometimes they get a little upset with me, sometimes they think I'm joking with them, I say, listen, you're not on a vacation, and you don't deserve this.
Yeah. Gee, Father, what do you mean?
I said, you know, I'm sure that a lot of your parishioners, because they want to encourage you, say, Father, you deserve this vacation. But I'm here to tell you this is not a vacation. And you shouldn't think about it as a vacation. And secondly, you don't deserve this. This is a gift. A gift that you do not deserve. And it's a gift from God. It's a gift from your people who love you. Your bishop who wants you to be the best priest you can be.
Oh, sure.
And it's not a vacation because it's formation.
Well, it's work, because we're going to talk about the schedule, and even as part of that, which you've just mentioned, the trips in Rome. We'll talk about some of the off-campus experiences and travels. But you have a wonderful site on the NAC, a website, pnac.org, folks. How does a priest, once he knows about this, how does he apply?
Well, as you say, he could start out at the website and visit our website for the Institute to see if it seems like a right fit for him. There, he can either email me and ask me for more information. Sometimes priests, because you can download the application there, sometimes priests download the application and they send me a finished application.
Oh, okay.
But if they don't do that, we send them the application. They have to fill out the application, which is a bit extensive, just asking about the priest's background and his interests and things. And then, of course, he needs his bishop's permission.
Obviously.
And so
he's going to be away for a while.
He's going to be away for a while. So, and once all of that has been taken care of, then we'll send a letter of acceptance.
And then the courses are twice a year in the spring and
yes,
fall, right?
So we have two different sorts of programs. In the spring, it's more of I think of it as more of a traditional sort of renewal program. So it's a 12-week program. It usually begins early to mid-January and goes through the Monday after Palm Sunday, so that if a priest wants to be back in his parish for Easter, he can be there. And during those 12 weeks, they will study everything from canon law to church history to preaching to moral theology and beyond. And then, of course, it's not all work. And in the classroom, we do a lot of excursions.
And you'll have the station cross. And the station masses during Lent.
During Lent, we have the station masses, exactly. And so the priests are welcome to join the seminarians, walk to the different churches here in Rome, and many priests do that.
Yeah.
As part of our regular program, we always go to the Santa Sabina Mass, which is on Ash Wednesday.
Oh, sure.
And then the priests are free to decide whether they want to go to continue through all the station churches or not. And quite a few do.
But that can be a walk. I know at my age today, I'd probably say, no, I'll take a taxi to St. Paul's or whatever.
Right, exactly.
That's all the time today I have for Benedictine Father Ed Linton. He's here in Rome at the Pontifical North American College, where he heads the Institute for Continuing Theological Education, which he calls from time to time ICTE. This is an institute for priests furthering their education in Rome, and he tells some wonderful stories linked with the founding of the Institute and the courses it offers during the year. So stay tuned for part 2 next weekend when Father has a lot more to say. See you same time, same place.
For more information on these stories or to check out Joan's blog and to ask her a question, go to EWTN.com. That's EWTN.com. Thanks for listening to Vatican Insider on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.